10,000 men from different tribes of Arabia have gathered near Medina. There has never been such a huge accumulation of men for battle in Arabia. All these men have only one goal: destroy Medina and wipe out the Muslims from existence. How will the Muslims resist the attack with only 2,500 men? Year 626. The Muslims have created a strong foothold at Medina. It has been 5 years since the migration from Mecca. Since then, Muslims were getting stronger. The trade route to Syria was still under Muslim control. The victory at the Battle of Badr and the survival at the Battle of Uhud had transformed the Muslims into a regional power. Medina and its surroundings were under complete control of the Muslims. This meant that the lifeline of the Meccan economy was cut off for 5 years already. Meccan leader Abu Sufyan was desperate for an opportunity to get rid of the Muslims once and for all. The opportunity came when representatives from two Jewish tribes, Banu Nadir and Banu Kainuka, approached him to launch an united attack on the Muslims. These two Jewish tribes were expelled from Medina a few months ago as they broke their treaty with the Muslims. They had to relocate from Medina to a region called Khaybar where other Jewish tribes were living. They wanted to wipe out the Muslims from Medina and regain their territories that they had lost due to expulsion. So both the Meccans and the two Jewish tribes wanted the same thing. As they started conspiring, several other Arab tribes joined them against the Muslims. Thus, a confederation of non-Muslim Arab tribes were formed. The word of confederation in Arabic is Ahzab. So, this battle is also known as the Battle of Ahzab. Never before in the history of Arabia, so many tribes have united their strengths for a common goal. This was a dangerous event for the Muslims, as they would now have to face the entire force of Arabia at once. The two Jewish tribes proposed to fund the campaign if the other tribes would provide manpower. As agreed, the Meccans prepared almost 4,000 of their men for the battle. Another strong tribe located in the north of Medina, named Ghatafan, agreed to send around 3,000 men. The other tribes also sent men, which formed the rest of the army. In total, the army was almost 10,000 men strong. The plan was simple. The Meccans would advance towards Medina from south and the Ghatafans from north. Once they unite their force near Medina, they would start slaughtering the Muslims and destroy Medina. December 626. The Confederates were around 7 to 10 days far from Medina when the news of the advancing army reached the Muslims in Medina. An emergency meeting was called at the Mosque of the Prophet to discuss the defense plan. The Muslims were at a loss on how to defend themselves. Then a companion named Salman al-Farsi radiallahu ta'ala anhu proposed a plan. He originally came from Persia and had prior knowledge about siege warfare, while the people of Arabia had no such experience beforehand. According to the plan, the Muslims decided to dig a trench and defend Medina from invasion. As Medina was surrounded by mountains on 3 sides, there was only one opening through which an army of 10,000 can approach, and that was the northern part of the city. So it was decided to dig the trench there. The Muslims had around a week to complete the project. So all able-bodied men in Medina, including the Prophet ﷺ himself, participated in digging the trench. This was winter with very cold weather and severe food shortages. But the Muslims kept on digging. After a week of continuous toil through day and night, the Muslims could finish the trench before the Confederates arrived at the city. After a few days, the Confederate army arrived and camped near Medina. Once they advanced towards the city, they came upon the deep and wide trench which was impossible for them to cross. So they laid siege along the whole trench. The Muslims gathered on the other side of the trench to defend their home. The word of trench in Arabic is Khandaq. Thus began the Battle of Khandaq, or the Battle of the Trench. Back in the city, all the women and children were sent to different fortifications scattered in Medina. In the south, Muslims had a peace treaty with the last remaining Jewish tribes in Medina, Banu Qurayza. The back being secured, the Muslims could focus all their forces in defending the trench. To weaken the Muslim defense, the Confederates started to conspire with Banu Qurayza against the Muslims by sending an emissary. After several attempts, they could sway Banu Qurayza to their side. Now the Muslims were trapped from both sides and their women and children were unprotected. Before the Muslims could react to this development of events, spies from Banu Qurayza already came inside Medina to devise a plan for attacking the Muslim women and children. In one such event, 2 spies from Banu Qurayza tried to infiltrate a fort where the aunt of Prophet ﷺ was located with other Muslim women and children. As one of the spies tried to climb the wall, the aunt of Prophet ﷺ took a sword and killed the climber. This gave the spies a false understanding that the forts were protected, where in reality they were not. Upon receiving wrong information from the spies, Banu Qurayza hesitated to attack. The Muslims used this time to reorganize themselves. Several groups were made who would constantly patrol the streets of Medina. Also, instructions were given to the Muslim women to bear arms if the forts came under attack and to raise alarm, so that the patrolling Muslims could come to their aid. In the meantime, the siege along the trench continued. Every morning, soldiers from both camps would take their position on opposite sides of the trench and shoot arrows towards each other. After every few days, a handful men from Meccan army would successfully cross the trench, only to be killed or repelled by the Muslim defenders. The Prophet ﷺ started planning to disintegrate the Confederacy. He sent a messenger to Ghatafan offering them wealth in exchange for their retreat, but this attempt failed. So the Prophet ﷺ sent a companion named Nuaym ibn Masud radiallahu ta'ala anhu to the enemy camps. The whole confederacy respected Nuaym radiallahu ta'ala anhu and did not know that he had secretly converted to Islam just before the campaign started. Nuaym radiallahu ta'ala anhu could slowly create distrust among Meccans, Banu Qurayza and the rest of the tribes. The siege dragged on for weeks while this was going on. The Muslims were on the brink of collapse because of starvation, exertion and harsh winter weather. Gradually, the splits among the tribes of the Confederates became too big for unity. The Confederate army was suffering from harsh winter weather as well. During the 5th week of the siege, the weather became extremely cold and stormy. Strong gushes of wind wreaked havoc on the Confederate camps. Tents and food supplies were destroyed. The Muslims took shelter in a nearby hill and were sheltered from the storm. The Confederates were already fragmented and tired after a long siege, and now after losing their supplies, they saw no point in continuing the siege. They immediately gave up and lifted the siege of Medina. The Muslims woke up the following day with news of victory and joy. The enemy had left. The Muslims prevailed against the united force of Arabia with only 5 casualties. The prestige of the Meccans as the main tribe of Arabia was lost, as they could not dislodge the Muslims from Medina even after putting their maximum strength. Any chance of recovering the trade route to Syria was also vanished. This was the beginning of the end for the Meccan dominance. There was now another superpower rising in the Arabian Peninsula: Islam.